In the spring of 1950, peat cutters working a bog in Jutland, Denmark, struck something unexpected with their spades. It was a body, a man, naked, curled on his side in the dark peat, with a noose still twisted around his neck. The local police were called. The police called an archaeologist. The archaeologist called Copenhagen. What they had found was a human 2,400 years old, preserved so completely by the acidic bog water that the stubble of his beard was still visible, the lines on his fingertips were still readable, and the contents of his stomach were intact. His name, given by the village where he was discovered, became Jutland Man. When forensic scientists examined his stomach in 2002, they found a porridge. 63 different plant species had been ground together and consumed in his final meal, hours before his execution. The dominant ingredient, by mass and by seed count, was a wild grain harvested from a plant that grew in every cultivated field in Iron Age Europe. The same plant grows in every cultivated field in America today. It grows in your driveway. It grows along your foundation. It grows wherever the soil has been disturbed and not yet conquered. Your grandmother would have called it pigweed. Your great-grandmother would have called it fat hen. Indian cooks call it bathua. Chinese cooks call it hui. Mexican cooks call it quelites. It contains 15 times more calcium than spinach, 8 times more vitamin C than oranges, more iron than beef, more protein per ounce than kale. In 2009, researchers at a pharmaceutical institute in India tested its leaf extract against human breast cancer cells in the laboratory. The extract killed the cells. In 1947, the Scots company began selling American homeowners a chemical specifically designed to destroy it. This is the story of lamb squatters, the most nutritious plant in North America, hidden in plain sight, growing wild between the cracks in your sidewalk while you spent the last 50 years pulling it out of your tomato bed and throwing it on the compost. The archive opens in the Ozark Plateau, around 6,500 years before the Common Era. Archaeologists excavating storage pits in eastern Oklahoma find seeds. They find them carefully separated from soil debris, deliberately dried, layered in clay-lined chambers alongside squash and sunflower. The seeds are tiny, less than 2 millimeters across, and there are tens of thousands of them. By 1700 BCE, those same seeds appear in storage pits across Kentucky, Tennessee, Illinois, and Missouri. The Eastern Agricultural Complex, as archaeologists now call it, was the first independent center of plant domestication in eastern North America. It predated the arrival of corn from Mexico by 2,000 years, and one of its core domesticated crops was a goosefoot, a chenopod, a species so closely related to modern lamb squatters that the two are now classified as the same plant. The wild form has a seed coat 60 microns thick, hard enough to survive 40 years in the soil. The domesticated form, bred slowly over 3,000 years by Native American farmers, had a seed coat just 20 microns thick, thin enough to germinate immediately, soft enough to grind into flour without breaking the millstone. This is the textbook definition of agricultural domestication, and the people who accomplished it had no written language, no draft animals, and no metal tools. They simply knew what they were doing. The same chenopod was being domesticated independently at the same time on 3 other continents. In the Andes, it became quinoa. In Mexico, it became huazontle. In China, it became hui kai. On the European side, where the wild plant had no soft-coated cultivar but was eaten anyway, it fed peasants from the Mediterranean to the Baltic. Pliny the Elder catalogued it. Roman soldiers carried it as field rations. Viking longships sailed with stores of its dried seed. Tollundman's stomach is not unusual. Bog bodies excavated across Denmark, the Netherlands, and Germany consistently show lamb squatters as the dominant ingredient in Iron Age porridge. For 10,000 years, this plant fed the human species across 4 continents. And then, in approximately 1 century, it disappeared from American memory. The native North American domesticated variety, Chenopodium berlanderi subspecies jonesianum, went extinct sometime after 1400 CE. The exact mechanism is debated. Most archaeologists attribute the loss to the gradual replacement of the eastern agricultural complex by Mesoamerican corn, which produced more calories per acre and stored better through humid summers. The domesticated Jonesianum seed bank was lost permanently. 3,000 years of selective breeding, gone. But the wild form survived. European settlers arriving in North America in the 1600s brought their own Chenopodium album seeds with them, the same plants their grandmothers had cooked with in Yorkshire and Bavaria and Brittany. The 2 populations interbred. Lamb squatters became one of the most common plants in colonial American kitchen gardens, eaten as a spring green when the cold storage cabbage ran out and before the warm weather crops came in. In April of 1947, the Scotts Company, a lawn care firm based in Marysville, Ohio, began the largest direct mail marketing campaign in the history of American horticulture. They were selling a new product. The active ingredient was 2,4-dichlorophenoxyacetic acid, called 2,4-D. It had been developed during the Second World War by chemists working under contract for the United States War Department, originally for use as a defoliant against Japanese rice crops. The war had ended before the chemical could be deployed. Now Scotts had found its post-war market. The product was sold to American homeowners as a selective broadleaf herbicide. It killed dandelions, plantain, clover, and lamb squatters while leaving grass alive. The marketing copy described these plants as enemies of the lawn. By the late 1950s, 2,4-D was the most heavily used herbicide on American residential property. By the 1960s, suburban homeowners associations across the country were writing bylaws that prohibited specific plants by name. Lamb squatters appeared on those lists. It is now legally prohibited in tens of thousands of American neighborhoods to allow this plant to grow in a yard the resident owns and pays property taxes on. The herbicide industry has grown to over $40 billion in annual global revenue. The combined weed control market exceeds $74 billion. Lamb squatters is the single most targeted broadleaf weed on American agricultural land, sprayed by every commercial farmer growing corn or soybeans, killed by atrazine, by glyphosate, by 2,4-D, and by dicamba. A single mature plant produces over 70,000 seeds. Bayer, Syngenta, BASF, and Corteva together earn billions every year selling chemicals designed to defeat what is essentially the most successful annual plant in the temperate world. While American farmers spray lamb squatters into non-existence, the global leafy greens market sells consumers $95 billion per year worth of spinach, kale, and lettuce. The spinach is trucked from California's Central Valley using irrigation water drawn from the Colorado River, which has now run dry before reaching the sea. The kale is washed in chlorinated water, packaged in single-use plastic, and shipped 2,000 miles to grocery stores. By the time it reaches the consumer, it has lost a substantial fraction of its vitamin content to oxidation. Lamb squatters, growing free in the ground next to the spinach field, requires no irrigation, no fertilizer, no plastic packaging, and no transport. In 2009, Manish Kubchandani and a research team at the Sam Higginbottom Institute of Agriculture in Allahabad, India, published a study in Oxidative Medicine and Cellular Longevity, a peer-reviewed Wiley journal. They tested a methanolic extract of Chenopodium album leaf against 2 human breast cancer cell lines, MCF7, the estrogen-dependent line that has served as the standard model for hormone-positive breast cancer research since the 1970s, and MDAMB468, the estrogen-independent line used to model the more aggressive triple-negative subtype. The lamb squatter's extract demonstrated cytotoxic activity against both lines. The researchers concluded that the plant warranted further investigation as a potential anti-breast cancer bioagent. That paper has been cited dozens of times in subsequent literature. No major Western pharmaceutical company has invested in clinical follow-up. The plant cannot be patented. There is no commercial market structure that rewards research on a free, uncontrolled, unkillable weed. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Powerhouse Food Study, conducted by Jennifer D. Neuer and published in Preventing Chronic Disease in 2014, ranked 47 fruits and vegetables by nutrient density per calorie. Watercress scored 100, spinach scored 86, kale scored 49. Lamb squatters was not on the list because the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention does not catalogue plants that are not commercially sold. By the calculation methodology Di Neuer used, lamb squatters scores higher than all but one of the foods on the list. You can find it tomorrow morning. It grows in any soil that has been disturbed in the last 12 months. Look for areas free of the chemicals we just discussed, in untreated garden beds, the borders of deep woods, or the edges of organic pastures. The leaves are diamond-shaped, light green on top, and the underside is dusted with a fine white powder that brushes off when you rub it between your fingers. That powder is farina. It is a natural plant trait that distinguishes lamb squatters from every other look-alike. The leaves are slightly toothed at the edges. The young plant rarely grows taller than 3 feet. Cook the young leaves like spinach. Boil them for 2 minutes, drain, sauté them in olive oil with garlic. The flavor is milder than spinach, slightly sweet, with no bitterness. The seeds, harvested in late summer, can be ground into flour or used like quinoa, which is its domesticated cousin. In India, bathua is folded into flatbreads and stuffed into dumplings. In Mexico, quelites are scrambled with eggs. In China, huicai is stir-fried with ginger. If you live in a neighborhood with an HOA, do not announce what you are doing. Pull a few leaves at a time from the back of the yard, rinse them, and eat them. The plant is not protected. The plant is not endangered. The plant will return next year, regardless of what you do. In the late 1980s, in a museum in Silkeborg, Denmark, the head of Jutland man was placed on permanent display. The body had decayed during the early conservation efforts in the 1950s, but the head and the contents of the stomach had been preserved. Visitors today can stand in front of a 2,400-year-old face that still has eyelashes and read the laboratory analysis of his last meal on a small bronze plaque mounted on the wall. He ate lamb squatter's porridge. The same plant grows along the rail line outside the museum. The Eastern Agricultural Complex disappeared from American memory by 1500. The native domesticated variety went extinct by 1400. The Scots Company began selling 2,4-D in 1947. Lamb squatters has been spit on, sprayed, ripped out of garden beds, and called a weed for so long that most Americans have never tasted it. It is growing in your driveway right now. We did not lose lamb squatters. We just decided to poison it instead of eat it. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe to Nature's Lost Vault and hit the notification bell. Every like and every share preserves what they tried to erase. The next vault opens soon.